Good afternoon and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Secretary, will you please take roll?
Assembly members Anderson, Carter,
Present.
Cole, Hardy, Howdigy, Kasama, Miller, Monroe Moreno, O'Neill, Roth, Torres Fawcett, Yeager, Urick, and Chair Marzola.
I am here, thank you. Please mark Assembly Member Urick present once he arrives. Welcome to everyone here in Carson City with us, those joining us by video conference in Las Vegas, and anyone tuning over the internet. Today we will hear three bills: Assembly Bill 116, Assembly Bill 121, and Assembly Bill 204. I will not be taking those in order. Before we get started, I would like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, which is listed in the agenda. When testifying, please turn the microphone on to speak and off to listen. If you have handouts for the committee, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony. In addition, exhibits and amendments must be submitted electronically as a PDF file to our committee manager no later than noon on the business day before our meeting. Committee information is available on Nellis, which can be accessed through the legislature's website. You may also You may also watch our meetings through Nellis or the legislature's website. We ask that public comments be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated. As always, I expect respect and courtesy in all our interactions, even if we may not agree. Finally, please put all your electronic devices, especially your cell phones, on silent mode. With that, we will go to our first agenda item. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 121. This measure revises provisions governing landlords and tenants. Assemblymember Considine, welcome. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Marzola, Vice Chair Howdigy, and members of the committee. I am Venetia Considine, and I'm here today to present Assembly Bill 121. 121 brings transparency and certainty to individuals and families seeking a place to live. This is not a new issue. In fact, I was here 2 years ago presenting this bill, which actually passed the legislature, but unfortunately did not become law. Since then, 2 national entities who lease residential units and properties in Nevada were sued by the Federal Trade Commission for practices that this bill hopes to end. I wanted to just read a little bit on those. One of them is Greystar, the biggest multifamily rental property manager in the United States. The complaint against Greystar is that it routinely advertised deceptively low rates to lure in renters and then waited until prospective tenants provided personal information or paid non-refundable fees before revealing that tenants are responsible for paying mandatory fees on top of the advertised rental price. These fees inflate monthly leasing costs significantly, sometimes by more than 10% over advertised rates. The complaint that is pending in the District Court of Colorado claims that Greystar's deceptive advertisements have cost renters hundreds of millions of dollars in non-refundable fees and higher than advertised leasing costs. The second entity is Invitation Homes. They were sued by the FTC and are in the middle of a $48 million settlement. Invitation Homes has agreed to a proposed settlement that would require the company to turn over $48 million. The corporate landlord will be required to clearly disclose all leasing prices, established policies, and procedures. And for example, one of the things they were sued on is consumers learned that the price would be higher than advertised only when they received a copy of their lease, and sometimes not even until the time that they signed the lease. These undisclosed fees range from services such as smart home technology, utility management, air filter delivery, and internet packages. Renters could not opt out of those fees. I'm sorry that I did not have these presented to the committee, but for anyone who's interested, you can go online and search Invitation Homes FTC or Greystar FTC, and that will explain more. Now I just want to get straight to the bill. Here's what AB 121 does. So if we can start with Section 2. So Section 2 requires landlords to provide a free way to pay rent, which does not require a tenant to pay a charge or fee, or requires providing personal banking information to an online app. For example, this would allow renters to pay by check, by money order, etc. So this would mean a tenant could pay their rent for free without having to use a portal to make the payment. Some people don't have bank accounts, they're underbanked, or they just don't want to share bank account information on an app or an online entity, which could be sold, scraped, or stolen. In other words, this section, Section 2, ensures that the landlord or property management company, additionally, is not profiting from the act of paying the rent. If a landlord requires a tenant to use a portal or internet website, this is Section 2, for maintenance, to review documents, to exchange communications, etc., as well as providing options to pay rent through the portal, they must list the costs and fees to pay the rent through the portal or website, and those fees cannot exceed the actual cost of the portal or the website. I do want to make clear, because there was a stakeholder question, that this Section 2B, the bottom of page 2, the amount of any fee charged to the tenant by the landlord or his or her agent for the use of the internet website or online portal must be separately identified in any written rental agreement. Because AB 121 does not require or attempts to ensure that no one is required to pay their rent through an app, then that becomes not a mandatory fee. However, I know that there are mandatory fees for using apps. I've seen them $9.99, 5% of the total cost of the rent. I have some information here. It's $5.25 a month. It's just random fees. So what this section does is, if a landlord or corporation is using that app, that somewhere in that lease there must be a document explaining what those fees are, and that they are not a profit center, that the fees for using the portal are just the portal fees themselves. If the committee doesn't mind, I'd like to jump to Section 6, which is on page 5, the bottom of page 4, because it just makes sort of sense to do it this way. Section 6, AB 121 requires that anytime the rental cost is listed, the amount must include all non-optional fees. Many landlords are listing fees for trash, sewer, entertainment packages, and other non-optional items, specifically the Invitation Home case, separately from what they are calling the rent. This resort-style fee style of price listing can be detrimental to a person trying to plan their monthly budgets when seeking a place to live. This change will provide transparency and certainty for someone living paycheck to paycheck, which is a large segment of the Nevada's population. And it provides relief and consequences for corporations and landlords who do not provide the actual amount with all mandatory fees as the cost of the periodic rent. So that's what Section 6 covers. Now, if we want to go back to Section 3, Section 3 is the civil deceptive trade practice piece in this bill. This attaches if a landlord lists the rent without the non-optional fees. And I want to be clear, non-optional fees are not pet rent. It's not, I want a parking space and I'll pay for the parking. These are things that you have to pay every month. It would include whatever the lease requires to be paid every single month. So one number, one price for your full amount of rent. That not only gives the tenant who is looking for a place that's affordable within their budget to know what they're paying, but it also provides fairness and competition, because you have some entities that are showing the full amount of the rent and you have some that are not, because they are showing an amount of rent, and then when you pay your non-refundable credit application fee or any non-refundable deposits, and then you sit down to sign a lease and you find out it's $75, $100, $150 more every month, you've already made those deposits. That's unfair competition. And then Section 4. Section 4 allows a prospective tenant to read a lease prior to putting down any non-refundable deposits. So this, again, is another consumer protection. It allows a prospective tenant to review a boilerplate lease so they would know what the lease requires, including any additional costs, requirements, et cetera, so they have complete information before making a decision to put down non-refundable fees. The boilerplate lease could be on a website, it could be emailed, however the landlord chooses to provide it. But I've seen leases that are up to 50 pages long, 30 pages long, 20 pages long, and there isn't time after you've put down all those deposits to read all of those provisions in a lease, much less negotiate them. These are not negotiable contracts. So allowing somebody the ability to look at a lease and potentially compare it as they're finding a place is, I think, a given for consumer protection. In closing, AB 121 ensures certainty for tenants when budgeting for monthly bills by ensuring the rental amount quoted is the actual amount of the monthly rent because it includes all mandatory costs. It also ensures fair competition between landlords because it stops hidden mandatory fees. And just as a response to the reason that this bill did not go into law last session, this bill does not require the amendment of any existing leases. And with that, thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Committee members, questions? We'll start with Assembly Member Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Assembly Member. You and I have visited a lot on these topics, and disclosure. I own a property management company, and I tried to really run it well and fair, and you and I have talked a lot about that, and I know there's a lot of organizations and groups out there that do charge a lot of extra fees and all that. I don't, and I'm opposed to those things as well, particularly some of the application fees where you see they're running 20 application fees to collect money before they decide on one person. And so, I think there's certainly room for a lot of those things to be improved. But my question to you is, when you're saying remove the non-optional fees, so for example, we do have a fee for trash, sewer, and in some cases water. And we do that separately because those are bills that in the past, it's been easy for the tenant to put in their name. Let's say the trash is a great example. So the tenant can put the trash in their name. What we discovered is the trash company is putting liens on the owner's property when the tenant isn't paying it. And in one case, I went to go sell a property, and the owner had almost $3,000 as a lien against his property. And now that's not his bill. That was the tenant's trash bill. And but they're not notified that this bill is growing, and a lot of us don't go look at our property recorded documents to see a lien is growing on there. And so our advice to the owners was to keep the trash in their name so the lien doesn't show up on their property, and then we charge the tenant. So it's really a pass-through cost to the tenant. City of North Las Vegas is now liening properties for water bills that aren't paid by tenants. And so again, that's another lien to the owner that is actually a usage of the tenant. So are you saying that, because those amounts change, let's say your water bill changes every month, and so are you saying that those bills could no longer be charged to the tenant, those pass-through costs?
I think there's two questions in there, so please correct me, but I'm going to try to unpack that. As far as the trash is concerned, I know as a homeowner, I get an annual bill for trash, and then I pay it quarterly, but that annual bill tells me what the trash is for the entire year. In those situations, I know what it's going to cost me every single month. If a landlord chooses to make that a mandatory fee, I think that a business is entirely able to see what that annual trash is and then divide it by 12 and put that in the mandatory fees and collect that within the rent. I know for the first 15 years that I lived here, I rented, and my trash, my sewer, all of that was included in my rent. I don't know when those were separated out, but I know just by past experience that it's possible to not only leave that as a mandatory if you choose to keep the trash in your name, that could be included. Same thing, with the sewer. So that's one piece. And then as far as the water, I know we talked about this a couple of years ago. I kind of analogize that to the electric. A tenant moves into a place, they put the electric, the internet, the cable, gas, all of those things in their name. If they don't pay the electric bill, that property might not get liened, but they will have the electricity shut off until that bill is paid in full. With water, from my understanding, from talking to two of the biggest water entities in the state, that bill, if that's the worry, can go to both the tenant and to the landlord, and then the landlord can make sure that the tenant is paying it, and if they're not, they can have a conversation with the tenant. But water is sort of a mandatory thing. But if the landlord is paying it like a utility, then it's no different than it is the gas, the internet, Cox community, whatever, that they're using. So there's two ways to do it. You can either, as a business, figure out what that cost is going to be. It's my understanding that by far the majority of leases are 1 year or under. So if that's the case, as a business, I think you tend to plan out for a year or more what those fees would be within that year, especially if it's a single house as opposed to an apartment complex, and adjust that accordingly. The reason for this is if there is a landlord that is including all of this in the rent and a landlord that is not including this in the rent, and someone is shopping around for a place they can afford, and they're looking at an advertised price or the price that they were told or their price online, and then they go in and they're like, oh, I can afford this one, that's unfair competition. And I don't think that that is fair for a tenant who gets stuck in a situation where they have to pay more than they need to, or fair to the business community that should have a fair playing field. Did I answer your questions?
Yes, you did, and I understand that some of the fees.
Assemblymember, did you need a follow-up?
I'm sorry, may I?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. So I understand what you're saying. Some of the fees are kind of set for the year, so that's easier to kind of determine. But some of them are truly usage, like the water. And the reason some of these started to get separated, I can tell you, is because the fees went up so much, is why people started listing them separately so that the owners were covered for some of these large fee increases. But in my example, the water, it just seems that's a usage that can change by the month. It goes up and down, and so that is not so easily calculated in your example, and I would have concern in that area.
Thank you, Venetia Considine, for the record. I'm sure that water goes up and down just as like electricity does, especially, or gas up north or electricity down south. I guess
But the
that's my
electric
answer.
company doesn't lien your property. Some of the municipalities are now liening the property. That's the difference.
Do you have a question, Assemblymember?
No, I'm sorry.
Thank you. We will move to Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing this piece of legislation back, Assembly Member. I was looking at Assembly Bill 218 from last legislative session, which I believe is the bill that you were referring to. I was only able to look quickly, but is this bill exactly the same as Assembly Bill 218 from the last session, or are there differences between Assembly Bill 121 and Assembly Bill 218?
Venetia Considine, for the record, thank you for that question, Speaker Yeager. It is essentially.
Just don't call me Senator, it's okay.
It is essentially the same. When they reprinted this, they moved Section 3.5 to Section 4. So there are some small issues, just some tiny things like that are different. But also, I have been meeting with stakeholders, and depending on how these conversations evolve, I may do a very small amendment to one section of the bill, so that would be a small change.
Thank you. Could I ask a follow-up, please, Chair? So, Assembly Member, I was looking at the governor's veto message from last session, and of course you referenced that this bill did pass. It didn't get enacted. That's because the governor vetoed it. And I'm looking at his June 16th, 2023 letter, and really it just has one point of contention with the bill. And so the stated reason that it was vetoed, and I'm just going to read from this because it's easier, it's only a couple of sentences. He says, the letter says, it would be impossible for a landlord to comply with this bill without amending the original lease, which would require agreement from both parties. In practice, it would create an incentive for a tenant to choose not to agree to such an amendment and instead pursue legal action against the landlord. Existing leases must have been considered in this legislation for it to be remotely sensical. I'm not sure I understand that last sentence, but it appears the governor's concern was he or whoever wrote this letter believed it would require all these leases to be, I guess, renegotiated or redrafted. I think if I heard you correctly, you said that that would not be the case or that was not your intent. So could you just make abundantly clear on the record what your intent is? Because the way I read this veto letter, if that was the only concern, that's something that would be very easy to get either legislative intent or if there needs to be an amendment. So if you could just speak a little bit to that, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Speaker. Venetia Considine for the record. Yes, that's why I actually included that this bill does not require amending existing leases because that was never the intent. The bill does not have an enforcement date, so if it is passed, it would start in October. And as I mentioned previously, by far the majority of residential leases in the state are under a year in length, so it would not take there wouldn't be that many leases in October. The intent is not to have people to rewrite leases or to stop somebody in the middle of a lease to do this. The intent is to start in a new lease or when a lease ends before a new lease is signed. Thank you.
Vice Chair Howdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Assemblymember, for bringing this bill. I believe in transparency, and I believe in people knowing exactly what they're going to pay. And I had faced similar questions on one of the bills that I brought last session. And one of the things was, I'm going to use the water example. Would a landlord be able to say, like, these are all of the fees included in your rent, an $800 rent, the cost of trash, since they know what the actual hard cost is, and then include in the line item water, the actual cost, and then just say what the actual cost is for the month prior or the month or that month. So where that tenant would then be aware, like, hey, I'm responsible for water. The water's going to be kept under the landlord's name, but I know that I'm responsible for the actual cost of the water. And that way the landlord's billing them for what the actual cost is and not using it to, like, make a profit. Would that be doable under your bill?
Thank you, Majority Leader Howdy. Venetia Considine for the record. The intent of this bill is from a consumer protection deceptive trade practice point of view. So the goal is that the rent is one number. So, and that would include any mandatory fees. So I think that there are some options. Definitely in a lease, somebody could list out that, sewer is $20.24 a month, whatever, if they wanted to. But in order to stick to that mandatory fee, I think that water could be looked at in multiple different ways. Just like other utilities, the tenant could get the bill and pay the bill directly to them. The landlord can determine how much water has been used every year for the past 3 years or going into the future, divide that by the number of months in the lease, and average that out that way. But the sort of stake in the ground for this is that you know what your monthly rent is, and that it's consistent every month so you can plan otherwise. And I know I have monthly payments that I make, but I also know that my utilities vary, so the utility could be outside, like your gas, like your internet, like any of the other bills. Thank you.
Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. My question is in regards to what the fees that we're seeing actually look like. So, I understand that as a landlord, for example, if I could contract regarding whether water is paid and part of the lease as a set fee or it's determined that I want to keep that outside of the contract, and that's something that I would be able to do. And then handle any repercussions, for example, if a lien was placed on my house. But what I'm more concerned about is what it's actually looking like in real time in Nevada. What kind of fees, unreasonable fees, are landlords placing onto tenants? What do those look like?
Thank you, Assemblymember Roth. Venetia Considine for the record. So I have seen fees from air filters every month, that's an additional fee, from your trash, your water, your sewer, fees for preparing the monthly statement, like a paper fee, even though it's through a portal. I've seen fees for property taxes, fees for, I should have had an exhaustive list, but I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember these off the top of my head. For, I guess, those are the things that I want to make sure that I say that are correct on the record right now, but I can get you sort of a more exhaustive list, but I have been reached out over the past 2.5 years. People have reached out with some things I cannot sort of believe that they have to pay for, that are not mandatory and they're just added on.
Committee members, any additional questions? Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time. Assemblymember Considine, question. I used to rent also, and we had an unusual winter from the house that I was renting, the small place that I was renting, and the landlord, they were worried about actually snow building up on the roof and the expense also of additional snow removal from the driveway up to the houses. So we got hit with a fee for that, to get the snow off the roofs, et cetera. So how could you address some of these unforeseen expenses within your bill that you're proposing? Do you have any suggestions?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman O'Neill. Venetia Considine for the record. I guess there's a couple of things that I want to say. First is a lease is a contract, and if a lease says this is how much the payment is for a certain period of time, then that's the contracted agreed upon rate during that certain period of time. Let's say I run an interior decorating company, and I have signed a contract with a homeowner that, or a business that wants to do X, Y, and Z within their house. And I do my research and I figure out what all of those costs are going to be, and I present them with a contract, and the contract says X amount of dollars will pay for everything I'm doing for you. And then a month later, when I'm ready to go do the actual interior design job, I go to buy my materials, but my materials have gone up significantly. I cannot go back and tell that person that they must now pay more. I can go back and say, costs have risen, do you want to do a change order? Do you want to negotiate? But a contract is a contract, and a lease and a landlord and a property manager are all businesses, and I think that is the basis for this, is a business has a responsibility to not only uphold contractual arrangements with somebody, but also to plan for unforeseen circumstances to cover some of those issues when possible. And I just want to repeat that the majority of leases in this state are less than a year in length. Quite a few of them are month to month. So in a written lease that is a contract, I think the terms of those lease, the expected understanding on both sides is that the terms of those lease remain the terms of the lease.
May I follow up, Chair? So I understand probably the best solution would be for the landlord just to raise his rent to cover any unforeseen costs then that may come up during the lease. Would that be a fair recommendation then, you're saying?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman O'Neill. Venetia Considine for the record. The other portion of this bill is to enforce fair competition. So a landlord has the ability to charge whatever they want for rent as it stands, but a tenant should have protections that when they're going from one place to another and they're looking at what that rent is going to cost, that they can choose the rent that they can afford and make those decisions in a fair and free competition economic-wise.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the time, Chair. Thank you.
Any additional questions? I don't see any. We will move to hear testimony in support of Assembly Bill 121. Is there anyone here in Carson City? Please remember you have 2 minutes each. State and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, Jonathan Norman, with the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. In support of this bill, I think having transparency for consumers is fundamental. We're not asking, we're asking that people know what they're signing up for and what they're agreeing to. And on Invitation Homes, when we think about companies like this, you know, they own 3,500 homes in Clark County. They own 80,000 homes nationally. And when you talk about what they're making off of these fees, it may be, you know, $60 a month here, $60 a month there. But when you look at the FTC complaint, it's $24 to $26 million for the mandatory smart home fee, $4.3 to $9.5 million for the management fee, $1.9 million for the air filter delivery fee. And the FTC had internal communications with the executive team where they talked about raising fees as juicing the hog. So that's how they're treating our consumers who are just trying to have a property. And they're intentionally hiding these fees deep in a lease. And if you've seen a lease, many of you may have signed one recently because you're in Carson City now. And we're having leases that are 40, 50, 60 pages long. So one example for Invitation Homes, they put one of these fees on page 60 of their lease. So how can a consumer know what they're signing up for, know what they're how to budget if they don't know when these fees are coming? And when we talk about, they have a $500 non-refundable fee that they would charge prior to approving you. So it's $500 non-refundable. So this is significant amounts of money, and I hope for your support on this bill. Thank you.
Hello, committee. My name is Ashley Kennedy, representing Clark County. My last name is spelled Kennedy. And at Clark County, we have various social service programs where we're working with tenants and prospective tenants, and we are supportive of this bill for the sake of transparency for tenants. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Carlos Hernandez, representing the Nevada State AFL-CIO. My last name, Hernandez, and we are in full support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in support? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 121? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 121, please press *9 now to join the queue. Chair, no callers are choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. We will move to hear testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 121. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For the record, John Sandy, Johnsande, here today on behalf of the Nevada State Apartment Association. To begin, we applaud the efforts of this bill. We support transparency in rents and fees that are charged, and definitely aren't trying to protect the bad actors that are being attacked by FTC and others. Our issue with this is that the bill seemingly, and as the conversation you guys have kind of discovered, this bill will transfer all of the burdens all of unforeseen costs on the landlord. It's difficult to forecast, especially with bills that vary from 1 month to the other, to put those down accurately. And we think there needs to be some wiggle room, especially in light of the fact that, and I want to just read some of the penalties that landlords could face if they accidentally don't disclose correctly a fee, if they transcribe numbers. They'd be subject to any damages the tenant has sustained. That's not actual damages, it could be any damages. Equitable relief as the court deems appropriate, tenant's costs in the action and reasonable attorney's fees, statutory damages of $1,000 for each violation involving deception, treble the amount of actual damages sustained. So it's a laundry list of what a landlord could be faced with, and especially for smaller landlords. Many of you might be landlords yourself. I mean, trying to craft the lease and think about all the fees that you could possibly be recurring over on a monthly basis could be really difficult for those smaller, less sophisticated landlords. And so these are just some considerations that we had. Again, we support the efforts of trying to be transparent and having tenants understand what they're signing up for. We just don't think that this quite hits that mark exactly. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 121? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 121, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, good afternoon. Could you guys hear me okay? Grandchild crying in the background. This is Dora Martinez, Madam Chair. I wanted to call to testify in favor. May I please go ahead?
Okay, yes, we are in opposition, but we'll go ahead and move to support. Go ahead, and you can begin when you're ready.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Okay, thank you. So, excuse my crying granddaughter. So this is Dora Martinez with the Nevada Disability Action Coalition. We wholeheartedly please support this bill because some of my members are visually impaired, hard of hearing, and elderly folks, and they are not clear when they sign the lease. Sometimes, for example, the landlord would say, "Oh yes, you get free cable," but when they sign the lease and they go get that key, they said, "Oh, you need to pay an installment fee." And so transparency is important. And thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you for calling in. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line for opposition?
Yes, Chair, one moment.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can.
Hello?
We can.
Hello, Elizabeth Learnhardt, Zephyr Cove. I would like to give public comment against this bill. I'm speaking for 80% of small landlords that provide 80% of the units to tenants. It has been customary, even in California, because I had rentals there, for tenants to pay utilities. It should be declared, I'm all for transparency, that in Nevada, cities and counties have made the landlord responsible for certain utilities. I recently, as far as 3 months ago, had to pay over $500 for a delinquency fee for a water bill for a tenant, although I checked every month with the county, and the county basically confirmed me and said they would shut the water off and they wouldn't pay. Well, they didn't, and I ended up with a bill. It has been worse, but yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hello, I'm getting it. Okay, yeah, it has been made worse by the situation that the Nevada courts have sealed the evidence of evictions and bankruptcy during COVID. I could not discover this behavior from my tenants ahead of time. So I'm saying you need to look at both sides. You need to look at the fact that most of the rentals are provided by small landlords like me. And if you continue with this and make us throw us in the same basket as these big companies, you will have less available units to be rented because I decided to sell and not rent anymore. So this is my testimony. Please consider that when you make a decision. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for calling in. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
If you are calling in to provide testimony in opposition for Assembly Bill 121, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, it appears our caller is not unmuting to begin speaking. Would you like to proceed?
Yes, please. Are there any additional callers?
Yes, Chair. Caller ending in 583, you are unmuted and may proceed when ready. Chair, it appears our callers are not unmuting at the moment. Would you like to move on?
Yes, please.
There are no additional callers to provide opposition that are choosing to unmute at this time.
Thank you. We will move on to neutral testimony and we'll be back to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in the neutral position to Assembly Bill 121? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral? You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Marzola, Vice Chair Howdigi, members. Mackenzie Warren Kay with Brownstein, WARRENKAY, here in the neutral position on behalf of Ovation Development and the Nevada Multifamily Alliance. We want to acknowledge Assemblymember Considine for meeting with us, better fleshing out her intent behind the legislation. We'll continue to work the bill with her. Certainly want to acknowledge all that she's doing this session in housing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in the neutral position? I don't see any broadcasts. Is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 121, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was trying to testify in against, but I guess my smartphone wasn't very good at signaling that I'd wanted to testify. So, my name is Ron Ariel. Can you hear me?
We can. You can go ahead and testify. Please state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes. And you are testifying in opposition?
Ron. Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
So my name is Ron Ariel, Aryel for the record, Duck Pond Investments. We have both apartments and houses for rent. I appreciate the intention of the bill, but what in fact this bill does is it saddles the landlords like me with responsibilities that are not properly ours. Signing up for a lot of utilities, cable, things like that, that's the tenant's responsibility and not ours. So it is entirely inappropriate for us to be saddled with that. The other thing is I use a very, very responsible property manager. His name is Schoenberger, as a matter of fact. He manages, he and his small staff manages a lot of properties, including mine. And so trying to micromanage, this bill basically micromanages his management of my properties. And I don't think it's appropriate for the legislature to be micromanaging my property manager to manage my properties, because what's going to happen is he's going to have to charge me more money to manage the properties in accordance with the legislature's micromanagement, and therefore the rents are going to have to go up because somebody has to cover that extra cost when he has to hire additional employees to follow board dictates from the legislature. 121 is essentially a bad bill. Intent may be good, but it's essentially a bad bill that is saddles us with responsibilities that are not properly ours. And so I would ask that for the sake of the tenants and the rent, please vote this bill down. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
CYRUSHOATY. It's a great pleasure to talking on this system for the first time in 2 years. I am neutral. There's a lot of good intentions in this bill. I have heard a lot of good arguments on both sides. I am just a tad bit concerned I could be wrong, it's gonna put a lot of burden on landlords. My mom in Orange County, California wants to rent her home, and she's very concerned that when she rents it out, there's just too much power to tenants. And I'm just hoping that this doesn't do that. And by the way, I will not support any housing bill until we address the federal lands issue, because there's been a lot of efforts to reduce costs.
Sir,
but the
I need
elephant
you,
in the room
sir,
is the federal land policy.
if you're testifying a neutral position to this bill, please focus on Assembly Bill 121.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, so just want to make sure the elephant in the room is addressed.
Thank you for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 121, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers to testify.
Thank you. Assemblymember Considine, would you like to give any final remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Venetia Considine for the record. Thank you for hearing this bill. I appreciate your time on this. I just want to address the not saddling tenants to sign up for utilities. That's not what this bill does at all. If anything, it encourages the tenants to be able to sign up for the utilities so that they are paying for their own utilities. And the bottom line is this bill is so that it provides certainty to tenants who know what they're going to pay every month and fair competition to landlords who are listing the full cost of the rent every month. Thank you.
And thank you for being here today. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 121. I will now open the hearing on 116. 1 minute recess. Assembly Bill 116. This measure revises provisions relating to food delivery service platform providers. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, you may start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and committee members. I am Assemblymember Selena Torres Fawcett, representing Assembly District 3 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 116, which revises provisions relating to food delivery service platform providers such as Uber Eats. This interim, I chaired the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs, and during the final meeting of the interim, it was brought to the committee's attention that some businesses who utilize food delivery service applications such as DoorDash, Grubhub, or Uber Eats are conducting business illegally under the name of other legitimate businesses. These food delivery service applications may be delivering food that may not come from an actual restaurant, at least in the traditional restaurant sense. These virtual brands can only be found on delivery apps, and their offerings are prepared in what have come to be known as ghost kitchens. The name Ghost Kitchen is alternatively called a delivery-only restaurant, online-only restaurant, virtual kitchen, or dark kitchen, just to name a few. There are many types of ghost kitchens. For example, a number of ghost kitchens run their businesses out of commercial spaces without storefronts. Other ghost kitchens operate out of regular restaurant kitchens, but use a different name and menu. Some ghost kitchens pose as other brands and siphon business away from legitimate restaurants in our community. Food delivery platforms have a responsibility of vetting the businesses on their platforms. The advent of ghost kitchens has given way to concerns over consumer safety and ethical business practices. Regarding the safety of our citizens' health, there are reports of inconsistent food quality and poor food handling practices. These businesses may not have a valid permit issued by the health authority, making it difficult to regulate and inspect for public safety. Further, it poses unfair competition against legitimate licensed food establishments, since ghost kitchens can dominate search results on food delivery apps and are mimicking one's own business. Joining me today, we have some restaurants that will be speaking that are with us here in Las Vegas. But before we get to those introductions, I do want to note that I am aware that Uber has a proposed amendment to address concerns. However, it falls short of ensuring true accountability. Their amendment suggests a penalty that cannot exceed $500, which is a negligible amount for a large food delivery platform. This minimal fine does little to deter platforms from allowing unregulated ghost kitchens to operate. Without stronger enforcement measures, consumers remain at risk, and legitimate restaurants continue to face unfair competition. So we continue to look forward to working with stakeholders to ensure that we can hold them accountable when we have these ghost kitchens occurring in our community. So at this time, we'll go ahead and introduce Tom Roberts, Managing Partner of Meridian, Nevada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to present the bill. Did a great, fantastic job explaining the bill and what we're trying to do and the history of it. I just want to turn it over to, I'm with Meridian, Nevada, representing the Nevada Justice Association. One of our clients, our members is down south, Kendall Jones. He's also with two restaurant owners, Christina Martin and James Trees, and they're going to tell the history behind this bill and why we're here today. So if I'll turn it over to Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Kimball Jones, Kimballjones. This bill is not an effort to protect against some hypothetical issue that we might face in the future. This is necessary at this time because we're dealing with a situation now where there are business owners, restaurant owners, whose businesses are being essentially kind of co-opted here. I represent a number of hardworking restaurant owners who have been victimized by fraudulent restaurants whose scheme has only worked because of these apps. And in some cases, my clients have had their reputations tarnished by bad reviews because what happens is unhappy customers, the only people that I represent, they don't want to be on Uber's app. They have plenty of business, plenty of demand for their product, and they've developed a good reputation. But then what ends up happening to them is they end up having someone go on one of these apps, use their name, their goodwill, sell products, and then the person thinks they received something from the genuine restaurant, but they have not received anything from the genuine restaurant. And then they go on and tarnish the reputation of the genuine restaurant, thinking that it was them that provided the bad food or something along those lines. And then not to mention the other issues dealing with health and safety. What happens in the event of a food poisoning type of situation? Who is it going to be attributed to? And so there are some serious problems that exist. And these hardworking restaurant owners, they just want a fair chance to succeed in their businesses, which is hard enough as it is, with all the normal challenges of someone running a small business. And then to have their good names co-opted in this situation is quite a problem. And so it's something that is an active, real problem going on right now. The bill as originally proposed is well drafted, a penalty in the form of a misdemeanor against the company that chooses to not establish safety protocols and then benefits from the actual fraud that's taking place, actually receiving a percentage of each of these charges on these fraudulent transactions. There needs to be something that stops this from happening to stop the normal economic incentives that go forward when something like this occurs. And that's the situation right now. It's our understanding that every time one of these fraudulent transactions occurs, what do we have happen? Well, the app company is actually getting a percentage of that fraudulent transaction. And they know they are not getting a percentage of the legitimate company because that company is not on their app. And so the incentive structure is backwards for them to simply do the right thing. And that may explain the reason why very obvious and simple safety protocols have not been put in place on these apps. And so this bill requires that they not only can there be a misdemeanor for a violation, but it requires that these companies, these app companies, have very basic safety protocols, such as verifying there's a business license, verifying there's a health permit. Pretty simple, not really that big of a deal. Now, in Uber's requested changes to the bill, we find them to be untenable. We do not think that they're appropriate, and we think that they would not. We think they would completely make the bill meaningless. So first, Uber is requesting that we do away with the health permit requirement for verification. And I find that request to be absurd. The argument, as I understand it from Uber, is that we can do away with the health permit requirement because the business license alone will tell us that it's a legitimate business. Well, these are two different things that give us information about two important factors when dealing with restaurants. We need both a business license and we need a health permit. And so the idea that you would get rid of the health permit does not make sense. So they judge different things. Second, Uber and others are requesting that we change the misdemeanor to a fine not to exceed $500. And the idea that Uber or another multi-billion-dollar corporation would be hit with no more than a $500 fine per violation would make the bill meaningless. In my opinion, it would not change any behavior. To put it in context, we talk about $500, that's nothing. Even if we went to, you talk about a company with this sort of bandwidth, and when I talk about big numbers like this, sometimes in front of a jury, it's important for them to understand kind of what we're talking about. If we say 1 million seconds of someone's life, that's 11 days of their life. If we say 1 billion seconds of someone's life, that is 32 years of someone's life. And so these numbers are so astronomical that Uber will not care about a little $500 fine, but a misdemeanor for this improper behavior where they essentially, and I say Uber, but I mean anyone who operates an app like this and is not putting in the right safety protocols and then is benefiting from fraudulent transactions potentially, there should be a punishment that actually curbs or changes the behavior. Third, there is what we believe a red herring effort in Uber's proposal about really trying to reshape this bill so that it is focused on the ghost kitchen, essentially, rather than focusing on the facilitating app that is really allowing these ghost kitchens to engage in this behavior and to go widespread with it. And that would be absolutely unhelpful if that were to happen. In fact, we don't think that the ghost kitchen should be included at all in the bill. And the reason why is because Nevada fully addresses that issue already. We already have laws in place. NRS 205.380 already punishes anybody who obtains money by false pretenses, which is either a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on the severity of or the amount of money taken. And so we don't need to muddy the waters about what this is about by trying to make it about the individual that engages in the bad behavior. We have laws for that. But what we don't have is laws that can curb the behavior of these corporations who are, frankly, profiting off of this bad behavior, and they don't have a good financial reason to stop. And so
Mr. Kibble, do you think we could hear from, I know we have a couple restaurant owners there. Could we go ahead and go to the restaurant owners, please? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Good, Christina.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Christina Martin, Christina, Martin, Martin. I own Manitza's Pizza here in Las Vegas, and this is my third restaurant and the first time I've ever encountered something like this happening. But I'm no stranger to how hard it is to build a brand and to build your restaurant in good faith with all of your community. And so, the backstory here is last April, we received a phone call from a guest inquiring about menu items we don't serve, pastas, appetizers, things like that. And I found out through that phone call that she found us on Uber, which I have never been on because I'm not in alignment with their business practices or their service as far as my restaurant is concerned. And so I ordered a pizza from Manitza's Pizza and watched the driver pick it up at the location and drive it to my home. And I did it again and again to make sure I wasn't crazy. And so I brought it to the attention of the restaurant owner. It was denied, and I was ticked about it, obviously, as any of you would be if you also own this restaurant. And so I found another dozen plus restaurants that this particular location was catfishing as on the Uber and Postmates platform. And that's when I took it to social media and the news, because that's a big deal, not only because it's ripping off our brands, but it's putting our customers' safety in jeopardy. I have worked to put a lot of things in place to make sure we have an A on all of our health permits. All of our inspections are flawless. My team holds really high standards, and the restaurant in question had really ugly health reports. And I would rip any of my team members apart if food went out of a kitchen like that under my watch. And so we want protections in place, not just for our small businesses to be able to compete here in Las Vegas, but also for our consumers who deserve to know where their food is coming from. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm James Trees, James Trees. I'm the chef owner of Esther's Kitchen in downtown Las Vegas. I found out that a restaurant was posing as Esther's Kitchen from a Google review, a one-star Google review with a picture of a pizza that was highly not to my standard. We actually wood fire all of our pizza. We make all of our pizza dough, all of our pasta, everything in-house. We use the highest quality ingredients from Southern California to Southern Utah for our flour. And basically these people screenshotted my logo and a picture of one of the dishes of my food and used it to promote their menu, which number one was items that I do not serve. And they were charging more than my actual restaurant prices, which I thought was kind of insane. And then they were basically using my platform and my brand to siphon off business from other brands in the area. But more importantly, the fact that I'm getting complaints and I would have drivers show up at my restaurant and ask for food that we don't serve, number one. More importantly, we don't do any outside delivery apps at all. We don't use we don't use them simply because, I mean, the state of Nevada does not require drivers to have a health card, which means that we're putting our product in the hands of untrained people to be delivered to a guest. And on top of it, the unfair business practices that Uber charges not just the delivery fee to the guest, but also up to 30% fees of a restaurant, which eliminates profitability for a restaurant like mine, where we actually have a higher food cost percentage due to the quality of the product that we use. So it enables, bad actors who are using the lowest quality food product to put their name of a business that they, hold in esteem, and then take and basically use our stuff without having any of the standards or any of the requirements that we have to create the business that we have. It's a bad situation. That's all.
Thank you. And so if you find it necessary, I'm happy to do a more thorough walkthrough of the bill, but I do believe that we were able to kind of complete that through the presentation. At this time, we're ready for questions. Thank you.
I don't think a walk through the bill is necessary, but thank you for offering. And also thank you for bringing this bill forward and bringing all these issues to light. I think protecting Nevadans should be always first and foremost. And so we will start with Vice Chair Howdigi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. And I just have a quick question regarding the definition of a food dispensing establishment, and it might be better for legal. And so, I looked it up. The food is dispensing establishment, and it's like an establishment that serves food for immediate consumption, and it's generally restaurants and not like convenience stores or grocery stores. But would that include places like a foodie fit? Because I don't know if that's defined as immediate consumption, right? But would that fall, would those establishments also fall under the definition of a food dispensing establishment? And a foodie fits,
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record, this is a great question. I'm a big fan of Foodie Fit in Las Vegas, but it's like a meal prep service where the food is prepared in-house and then you go and you would pick up the food.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sam Quas, Committee Counsel. So I am not exactly sure of what the parameters of the foodie fit is, but it seems to me that immediate consumption means that you are about to eat it immediately. And so if you are preparing it later and they're getting you ingredients, if it's some kind of meal prep deal, if that's what you're saying, then you would not be eating it immediately. So I would think that that would not fall under the food dispensing establishment.
Assembly members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I'm shocked listening to this. I had no idea this was going on. I must be cooking at home too much, but it's just really shocking to hear this. My question is, where you have a food delivery service platform provider who violates the provisions of subsection 1 is guilty of a misdemeanor. Can you just educate me what type of monetary violations that would add up to? Because we're talking about $500 in one place where it was too little. So I'm just curious, what would be the penalties under a misdemeanor? Just for an idea.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Tom Roberts for the record. So how this was drafted is, I think in 2019 or during COVID, there was a change to the statute for food delivery services, and the misdemeanor was attached to it. And so when we drafted this, they just amended this to include the misdemeanor charge. So in this instance, it would be a misdemeanor, it'd be a crime, year in prison, $1,000 fine, I think is the max. Not much for a CEO of a
Thank you.
big company.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you for the bill. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for joining us today. For those of you that are new to the committee, Mr. Roberts used to be an assembly member with us. So welcome back. We will now hear testimony in support to Assembly Bill 116. Each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. We will start here in Carson City. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Peter Saba, or S-A-B as in Bravo A. And I'm the Senior Manager of Government Affairs for the Nevada Restaurant Association. The association strongly supports AB 116. Nevada's restaurant industry is a cornerstone of our economy, supporting thousands of jobs and serving communities across the state. However, the rise of unauthorized listings on food delivery apps where restaurants are falsely represented without their knowledge or consent has led to significant harm. When a restaurant is listed on a platform without permission, it loses control over critical aspects of its operations, including pricing, food, quality, and customer service. Customers may receive incorrect or outdated menu items, experience delays, or even receive improperly handed food, all of which damage the restaurant's reputation through no fault of its own. The Nevada Restaurant urges this committee to support AB 116 and stand with the hardworking restaurant owners and employees who deserve control over how their business is represented. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in support? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support? I may need you guys to please get up from your seats unless there's no one there for support. But if you guys could just sit back for a little while I take support testimony. Thank you. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 116? I don't see any broadcasts. Is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 116, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. Could you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you and the members of the committee. This is Dora Martinez. I wholeheartedly support this bill, and thank you to Assemblywoman Torres Fawcett for for sponsoring it. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, there are no additional callers to provide testimony in support at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 116. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Edith Duarte for the record, D-U-A-R-T-E. Proudly with Western Public Affairs, today representing TechNet. Today we are in opposition of AB 116. We do thank the sponsor for meeting with me a couple of times. She's very generous with her time going over this bill. Unfortunately, we do have to oppose it as it is now. So food delivery service platforms make it more accessible for folks to order food, goods, and materials from different vendors and merchants on platforms, making it easier to connect businesses to new customers. As introduced, we have concerns with holding a delivery service platform guilty of a misdemeanor. And I disagree that this bill would only apply to restaurants. Food establishments could include grocery stores with delis that have food that are readily available to eat for immediate consumption, some convenience stores, and non-food businesses that offer snacks in their listings on the platform. Additionally, there's disproportionate risk placed on the platforms. The platform would have to collect a permit from the food establishment and diligently verify the permit. Also, how often would the permit be collected? Would there have to be continuous verification? If so, when? Continuous collection placed on burden of the platforms, but it also impacts businesses who have to constantly submit documents. Operationally, the platform would be held liable for fraudulent permits, lapse permits, or permits that are suspended. So I'd like to just discuss that timeline of when the verification would take place. That said, TechNet does remain committed to working collaboratively with the sponsor and in finding a solution to AB 116. It's my understanding that the sponsor would like to continue the dialogue on AB 116, and I am committed to bringing together all the advocates for these platforms currently registered as advocates here in Nevada.
Mrs. Duarte, if you can please wrap up. It's been 2 minutes.
Sorry about that, Madam Chair. That's all I'd have to say. I just want to continue the conversation offline with all the advocates.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm Mark Fiorentino from Kemfer Kroll. It's Fiorentino. We represent DoorDash. DoorDash takes any kind of fraud extremely seriously and has actually invested substantial resources in working with the merchants to try to do what we can to make the resources safe and workable for them. We, too, have been very grateful for the sponsor's time she spent with us so far, and look forward to working with her. There's a solution, we think, that can get you what you need without putting an unnecessary burden on either the platforms or the merchants that they serve. So we're looking forward to continuing that dialogue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. AJ Delap with the Griffin Company on behalf of Uber. I'd just like to read a brief statement into the record and for the committee. Uber certainly supports the intent of AB 116 to ensure the food safety and legitimacy of the food dispensing establishments that utilize delivery platforms. Through partnerships between food dispensing establishments and delivery platforms, a useful and efficient industry has developed that assists the communities Uber serves in both convenience to the customer and jobs for the deliverers and food dispensing establishments. To best arrive at the intent of AB 116, Uber suggested the changes to the current language of AB 116. You probably have before you our suggested amendments. With the adoption of our proposed amendment, there will be more clarity in the proper licensing, jurisdiction, enforcement, and penalties of applicable NRS to the industry. This will help ensure the safety of the customer, help prevent unlicensed, nefarious food dispensing establishments from operating, and help protect the proven trustworthiness of established legitimate delivery platforms. We have requested an opportunity to collaborate with the sponsor regarding the language of the bill, and we appreciate the time that's been allotted to us already and look forward to working further on this measure. We too believe that there is ground here where we all can come to agreement and protect all of our needs. With that, I will conclude.
Thank you. And I believe we have a request from Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the indulgence. I did want to just ask Mr. Fiorentino and Mr. Delap, it's not a question, and anyone else who represents a platform, if you could just get us some more information about what your clients do in this situation. Obviously, we have a business that's acting a business that's acting poorly, but I would just like to hear, what do you do on your side either to prevent this, or if you learn about it, what happens at that point? I think, at least for me, that would be really helpful in considering whether to move this bill forward, to know what actions your clients either take proactively or in response to complaints. And I don't need that now. I assume you probably have to go back and get that information, but if you could provide that to the committee, I think that would be helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the air quotes on the business aspect of that. We certainly will be happy to do that, and we look forward to working with this committee and the bill sponsor on this as well.
Thank you. We will move to opposition in Las Vegas. Is there anyone in opposition to Assembly Bill 116 in Las Vegas? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 116, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller ending in 490, you are unmuted and may begin when ready. Chair, it looks like the caller is unable to unmute and begin. Would you like to proceed forward?
Yes, please.
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 116, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 116? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? You may begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm putting a timer on here, so I want to be timely. Thank you for making this facility available. I just happened to wander in off the street. My name is Chris Burris, spelled B-O-E-R-E-S. I live here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm the son of a restaurateur. My parents both had a French restaurant many years ago. And if my father was alive today, to hear that somebody was stealing his creative opportunity, what he did as a French chef, he was very good with knife work. I don't know if they would survive. So stealing the creative potential of these fine people up here. I got to tell you, Esther's is great. And I'm looking forward to make sure that I get the right address for your pizza we're going to have tonight. And I wanted to encourage the continued development of this bill so that in such a way that you're not threatening people with jail, but that the creative potential and ability for me to enjoy that stuff, as the folks who are testifying are representing the delivery services are trying to do. I encourage that modification of the bill so that we can get the quality service from the people who care to deliver it or who otherwise. So maybe looking into the enforcement against ghost kitchens is a good idea, but keeping in mind that we have to protect the creative ability of these people here. That's about it. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you so much for your testimony today. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in neutral?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 116, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Yes, hi. I tried to give testimony in opposition. I just wasn't able to do so. The system was kind of, may I go on?
We'll go ahead and go back to opposition, yes. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes.
CYRUSHOJJATY. I'm in opposition. I will ditto the comments. I think we should regulate these types of companies, but this is not the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line for the neutral?
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to provide neutral testimony at this time.
Thank you. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, would you like to give any final remarks?
Thank you, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett, for the record. Thank you, members of the committee, for allowing us to hear this piece of legislation today. Ultimately, people work their whole life to build a brand and to build a restaurant, like the restaurant owners that you heard from earlier today. And it is unfair to these brands and to these restaurant owners that their reputation can be ruined through application. And, you know, and that there is right now no solution in statute to protect these businesses. There's no way for them to challenge these providers that really have the responsibility, these applications that really have the responsibility to ensure that we have licensed business operators and that these are the actual businesses that they say they are. Ms. Martin mentioned in a conversation to us that, you know, after this happened to her restaurant, she was offered Uber credits. That's not a fair exchange for somebody replicating or duplicating your business online and tarnishing your reputation. And so the intent of this legislation really is to hold food delivery apps accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this bill. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 116. 1 minute recess. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 204. This measure revises provisions relating to medical debt. Assemblymember Carter, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Assembly, Commerce and Labor Committee. I'm Max Carter, representing AD 12, the east side of Las Vegas. That's MAXCARTER. And I'm presenting today this bill regarding medical debt reform. And so people in my district are worried about the rising cost of living, especially healthcare. Even with insurance, copays and deductibles add up fast. Treating a long-term illness or paying for an emergency room visit can be so expensive that some people end up in medical debt. The problem is compounded by insurance companies denying or delaying claims for care. Patients then pick up the bill, which becomes medical debt. Medical debt has become a pervasive problem. Currently, 7 in 10 Nevadans have or know someone with medical debt. When families face this type of debt, they must make hard choices, like skipping doctor's visits, not filling prescriptions, or even cutting back on food. Medical debt differs from other types of debts, like student loans or mortgages. No one chooses to get sick or have a medical emergency. It is also one of the most common types of disputed debt. Many people receive collection notices for bills they don't actually owe or that insurance should have covered. However, unpaid medical bills can still hurt credit scores or lead to wage garnishment, making it even more difficult for people to pay back their bills and move forward. AB 204 will protect people from extreme debt collection practices like losing their homes or having their wages taken. It also gives them more time to finish their appeal to an insurance company, set up a payment plan, or get financial assistance from a hospital. AB 204 protects Nevada consumers from unfair medical debt collection in the following ways. Number one, medical debt cannot be reported on credit reports. Number two, no arrests for medical debt. Number three, homes are protected. Medical debt cannot lead to liens or foreclosures on a consumer's primary residence. And that's key, the primary residence is what we're talking about. Wages and savings are protected. Wages, tax refunds, and bank accounts cannot be taken to pay off medical debt. Number five, there's limits on extreme collection actions. Before selling a medical debt to a collection agency, denying care due to unpaid bills, or taking legal action, medical providers must wait 180 days after sending the first bill. 2, send a written notice at least 30 days before taking action. And finally, inform patients about financial assistance programs they may qualify for. Number 6 is extra protections during emergencies. Patients are protected from collections during a declared state or public health emergency. 7, clear billing policy. Medical providers must clearly state if they plan to use aggressive collection tactics. 8, financial assistance rules. If a patient qualifies for help under a provider's financial assistance policy, the provider must immediately stop collection actions. And any refunds owed must be given within 60 days. 9, consumer rights cannot be waived. No asking people to sign on the dotted line so that we can engage in those predatory practices. And 10, the Attorney General can enforce these protections through fines, legal actions, and other remedies. Section 1 through 12 are definitions. Section 19 is conforming changes. Section 20 clarifies the effective dates of the provisions of this bill. And with that being done, I'm going to say that these are common sense solutions that help patients pay back their debt while still allowing hospitals and doctors to collect payments. And now I'd like to turn it over to my co-presenter here, Adam Zarin with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And we also have Peter Aldos with Legal Aid of Southern Nevada down south in case we have any technical questions that we need to ask. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Zarin.
Thank you, Assemblymember Chair. My name is Adam Zarin, that's Z-A-R-R-I-N. I'm the Director of State Government Affairs for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We're a national nonprofit trying to cure blood cancer, but also improve the quality of life for patients and their family. We support AB 204. Many Nevada families have medical debt. As the Assembly members mentioned, 7 in 10 Nevadans have or know someone who has medical debt. This is mainly due to rising healthcare costs. In a highly consolidated healthcare system, prices have continued to go up, along with the share of health insurance plans with a deductible of $2,000 or more. And in reality, many of the plans sold on the exchange here in Nevada have higher out-of-pocket cost limits than that. In fact, the out-of-pocket max for many of the silver plans is almost $8,000, if not more. For those with chronic illnesses like cancer, blood cancers, those costs will pile up. Again, in the first year after the diagnosis of acute leukemia, the cost of treatment will be $500,000. When cancer patients face that 4 in 10 will not start treatment altogether. Others will take on debt, and then they will feel trapped by their medical debt. That has impacts on their health. They skip or delay treatment. They might also change the food that they eat. And it begins to impact their mental health as well because they feel like I'm never going to pay off this debt ever. And they're constantly harassed by debt collectors during the process. This, again, medical debt fundamentally differs from all other types of debt. No one applies for or chooses to get cancer or have a medical emergency, and therefore it shouldn't be treated the same way as a mortgage or a student loan. This bill will provide protections from those extraordinary types of collections, but it will not stop the collection of medical debt at all. It just protects people's wages, their homes, their bank accounts, so that they can stabilize their lives and make a plan to pay back their debt. So please support the AB 204 and the financial health of patients.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. We will start with Vice Chair Howdigi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you literally stole the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking about this. I was like, medical debt is so much different than like an installment loan or revolving debt. I think most consumers, take a look at their finances, look at their debt to income ratio, and then willingly take on this contractual relationship with a bank, whether it's a car loan or a credit card, right? Knowing that they can pay this back because it works within their financial parameters. But the nature of medical debt is usually it's unexpected, right? It's an emergency most of the time. And most people don't know that this unexpected expense is going to hit them and it might not fit within their financial constraints of their monthly finances. And so I see it very differently. And I know that medical debt is also governed by federal laws. And one of my biggest concerns is that, medical debt is governed also by the CFPB. But we all saw what happened to the CFPB last week. The CFPB was shut down, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. People aren't allowed to go into the building anymore. They're not allowed to go to work. So one of the federal agencies that protects consumers against medical debt is no longer there to protect them. So this couldn't be more timely, Assembly member. So thank you for bringing it. My question is on Section 15, when it says that they can't practice these extraordinary collection actions. They can't take place until 180 days. Why even allow that? Why even allow it to take place after 180 days? This isn't like the regular type of debt that we've talked about. So someone who is faced with these like extraordinary debts for, prevented, it could be for cancer, right? All of a sudden is now being placed in a tighter situation because your credit report affects everything here in Nevada. It affects your property and casualty insurance. So now, as soon as their debt gets hit, now all of a sudden the cost for homeowners insurance, renters insurance, car insurance is going to go up because that's the primary factor in insurance. And so why not just let them maybe lien the property or lien the person and work out a payment plan without hitting their credit? Why allow them to hit the credit at all?
Thank you, Assemblymember Howdigi. Max Carter, for the record. We had to work out a balance, finding out, because healthcare providers are a business also. We have to protect their rights also to collect debts. We just want it to be done in a more humane manner. And when it comes to liens are very damaging. We don't want people removed from their place of living or lose vehicles and stuff like that. But we kept the liens narrowly tailored that are excluded to the primary residence because we do not want people becoming homeless because of the homeless situation would exacerbate it even more. So that's why we're going this route, is to protect both everybody involved in these situations.
And I do have one more follow-up because I know that under the definition of extraordinary collection actions, like after 180 days when they can take extraordinary collective actions, one of the things on here is under Section 6, item number 2 is deferring, denying, or requiring payment before providing medically necessary care. So after 180 days, when they can take this extraordinary collection actions, that means they would be able to still, after 180 days, deny someone care for an unpaid debt?
Chair Adams, and again, for the record, I think that is the case. We, again, as the Assembly member was mentioning, the providers and hospitals in this space, they have to be paid for their services. We want to be sensitive to that. But I think there are certain cases where if a patient cannot show the ability to pay, they can't get like a bone marrow transplant or a kidney transplant. So that is a common occurrence even today. That's why the majority of people have insurance for those situations. I think the number is about 10 or 11% of Nevadans do not have health insurance today. So for those who do not, they have to resort to medical debt in order to pay for their necessary health care.
Assemblymember Cole.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think I've got a general concern that we currently have a large void in the number of practitioners that are here in Nevada. And so my concern is going to be that if they feel they can't collect on their debt, that is real cost incurred to them, that they just won't practice here. So we'll actually have fewer doctors. So that's my general concern. But my question is also on some of the language. Section, 18, and then also 13, where we talk about they're prohibited, so collection agencies are prohibited from threatening some of the enforcement mechanisms. So my question is, what does a threat look like? Because if I just mention it to you, is that me threatening it to you? I don't think that's what you mean, but I think you need to define threat. And then in 18, the Attorney General has the ability to do thought policing, basically. And so I'm real concerned about that, that if he suspects that you are about to violate a violation or a provision of this, then there are consequences. So I think there's some issues there.
Thank you, Assemblymember Cole. I'm going to ask, this is Max Carter for the record. I'm going to phone a friend with Pete with Legal Aid down in Southern Nevada. Pete.
Carter and committee. For the record, Peter Aldous, P-E-T-E-R-A-L-D-O-U-S. I'm a staff attorney with Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. My practice focuses on debt and debt collection. Assembly member, getting to your question about threatening, in this case, they are threatening arrest. They are saying that if you do not pay this debt, you will be arrested. Under the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, debt collectors are not allowed to threaten to arrest someone, and not allowed to threaten to take action they're not actually able to take. When this bill bans arrest for medical debt, that would make it impossible for you to follow through on the threat. And I think that's why the threat language is there in that section. And then getting to thought police, and I understand why you might say that in section 18, but when they talk about, I believe the language is that if someone is violating or is about to violate the provisions of this act, then the Attorney General can take action. I think that is specifically focused on things like garnishment, on putting a lien on property or foreclosing on property. Some of these are a multiple step process in the law where you will first serve a writ of execution saying you're going to garnish wages or saying you're going to foreclose on someone's home. You have to provide certain notices, the lawsuit. So I think they're just trying to catch before the action actually happens and then has to be undone, trying to put some protection in place.
You can go ahead and follow up.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the indulgence. So specifically in section 14, it actually does mention not just arrest as being a threat. It mentions also the foreclosing or threatening to foreclose on any real property, threatening to obtain a lien against any real property. So I think it's more than just the arresting part. And then I think still on 18, if you clear up the language a little bit, what remedies the Attorney General might have on a potential violation to being maybe just seeking injunction.
Thank you. Max Carter for the record. And I would just say the two incidences you spoke about in 14 are both prohibited elsewhere. So they're already, so bringing them up is a threat, just bringing them up, because they're not legally empowered to put a lien on the property or foreclose on a property. So just the act of bringing it up is a threat.
Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward this language.
My question has to do with section 16.3 on page 5. It states that if an applicant is overpaid, that then there's a certain number of days, I think it's within 60 days. Is that upon payment, or is that upon notification that they have, and the applicant has notified the business that has been overpaid?
Thank you, Assemblymember Anderson. Max Carter for the record. It's 60 days from the discovery that they are owed. And that's put in there because we've had situations, there's lots of situations, where it goes literally years before people are reimbursed. And the system is almost designed to wear people out till they just give up. And so we want to stop that.
Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Assemblymember Carter. I don't want to bring up a sore subject, but I wanted to take you back to your Assembly Bill 223 of last legislative session, which dealt with debt collection agencies. It didn't deal specifically with medical debt, although there was a provision in there. And so I feel like I've been reading a lot of veto messages again lately, but your bill presentation made me go back to think about that bill, and that bill was nearly unanimous out of the legislature. I think 2 no votes. Governor ultimately vetoed the bill. And the reason I bring that up is I was just looking at his veto letter from May of 2023, and his concern about that bill seemed to be the private right of action. That was the only concern that was listed. And so when I looked at this bill, the first thing I thought to myself was, who has the right of action in this bill? Because if it's a private right of action, then we might have the same issue with a governor that we had last session. I see that you have given that authority to the Attorney General in this bill rather than to the individual. And so I guess I have a 2-part question. One, was that decision in response to the governor's concerns about Assembly Bill 223 of the last session? And then if you could just talk about why you think that is the right place for the enforcement mechanism.
Thank you, Speaker Yeager. Max Carter for the record. And yes, that was a primary concern in that I saw that the private right of action all across the board in the last session was very triggering to certain factions within our state government. So moved it over to under the Attorney General. And for the second part about why we moved it, I'll go over to Adam.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Adam Zarin again from Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Speaker, I think the reason I would place it at the Attorney General's office is because the patient's already dealing with mountains of paperwork, the extra burden of then having to go through the litigation to ensure that they have their rights enforced seems an incredibly unfair situation. So I think that's why I had to be at the Attorney General's office.
Chair, can I take in one last thing, add in?
Absolutely.
So I want to say, too, that the private right of action was seen as bringing the sledgehammer to the enforcement part of it. We're working hard to take the sledgehammer away that's being used to beat the citizens of Nevada down. So we want to be fair and equitable on that. Both sides should give up their sledgehammer.
Thank you for your response. Assemblymember Yurek.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Carter, I appreciate your heart on this issue. I sat on this committee with you last time, and I'm consistently just amazed at the policy considerations that we have to face in committees like this. And the challenges of a bill like this, where certainly the rising costs of healthcare have led to increased consumer debt because of those costs, and the challenges of paying that debt off. And just the threading of this policy is very difficult. So I want to ask a question. It really goes back to what my colleague was kind of hinting at earlier, because I don't mean this as a partisan attack at all, but I'm really trying to figure out how do we, by removing some of these debt collection tools, which can certainly be extreme, and I get what you're trying to do, but by removing some of these, is there the potential that we are removing an incentive for, and we've referred to it in other bills here today, bad actors, right, of taking advantage of this to not pay their debt, that then leads to doctors not getting paid, that could actually exacerbate our healthcare shortage here in Nevada. I can speak from my own personal experience in my practice where I engage with doctors who don't want to treat patients anymore because there's some insurance companies that don't pay the debt. And it leaves me in a shortage to try to find doctors that will serve the patients that I represent. And so can you help maybe us understand how what you're proposing would not exacerbate that problem?
Thank you, Assemblymember Urick. Max Carter for the record. And I'll start by saying that, you know, we've got two examples, New York and Texas. A red and a blue state have enacted prohibitions on wage garnishments, and their healthcare systems are thriving. I think that we can do so many what ifs and leave bad policy in place because what if, and that we need to take and protect Nevadans now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Adam Zarin from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Chair, Assemblymember, I just be clear, right? Providers can still send patients into debt collections. That is still a thing that will be available to them after this bill were to become law. We just do not want your wages, your home to be taken in that process. You know, I think for patients, as a patient advocate, there are two ways to approach this problem, and we want to solve them at the same time, right? There's this piece where we want to protect patients who have medical debt from the most extraordinary actions being placed against them because we know the impacts it has on their health and their emotional well-being, not even just their physical, like their financial health, right? So that's why this bill is important, but we're also supportive of efforts to reduce healthcare consolidation, right? I mean, the fact that our hospital systems are buying up other hospitals and other medical providers and then just driving up the costs, like we want to change that problem at the same time. We want to make health insurance higher quality and have lower deductibles and out-of-pocket costs. Like we agree in those on those pieces of policy, but we need to do both to protect those patients who have the unforeseen emergency or who have cancer, so that they don't, have to face the choices of like, am I going to pay my medical bill or my rent? And that's just an impossible choice to make a month to month.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any. Thank you for the presentation. We will now hear testimony in support of Assembly Bill 204. Each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to provide support testimony? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello, Chair Marzola and members of the Assembly Commerce and Labor Committee. My name is Carissa Pierce, Carissa Pearce, and I represent the Children's Advocacy Alliance as our Government Affairs Manager. CAA is an independent voice for Nevada's children, advancing systematic change in the areas of early childhood education, children's health, and child welfare to ensure every child in Nevada thrives. Today I'm testifying in support of AB 204 to protect families with medical debt. It is no secret that our current prices for medical treatments are egregious, causing many parents to feel stressed about the financial costs of care for themselves or for their children, which often also delays their receiving of care to avoid that medical debt. This issue is exacerbated for children with complex medical needs with bills that add up rapidly. AB 204 supports families with medical debt by not allowing a patient's wage to be garnished, the patient's house to be foreclosed on, or the patient's bank account to be seized in order to pay off their medical bills, allowing for them to continue providing for their family without the additional economic stress of not having a home or not being able to put food on the table. Receiving life-saving medical care shouldn't result in the overwhelming stress that many parents currently feel. We have the opportunity to do better for our Nevada families and children with complex medical needs, and to show them that receiving medical care doesn't have to upend the family's life more than it already is going to. Please consider easing the burden of medical debt to support our children and families, and consider passing AB 204. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I haven't used my voice for a couple of hours. My name is Robin Reedy, R-E-E, D as in dog, Y. I'm with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, that's NAMI, Nevada, and we advocate, educate, and support people who live with mental health conditions and helping the families that love them. I would like to read an anonymous testimony into the record if I could. At 24, I was violently assaulted and raped. The bipolar disorder and anxiety I had kept at bay with medications and therapy were no match for how quickly my life unraveled. The police officers at the hospital asked my sister if I did this often. Now the plans I had in place for years in my mind were useful. I finally knew I wasn't meant to be here. I gathered all the pills I could find, started the bath, and took a knife with me. Fortunately, I was found and taken to West Hills, where I spent a week in a locked unit. When I was released, it was to my sister's house, so I wouldn't be alone. It would be months before I found the right medications again, and years before the therapy helped, and I could cope and process that traumatic night. What still plagues me over a decade later is the medical debt from that stay in West Hills. Bills were sent in the mail to an address I was no longer living at, and at the recommendation of my discharging psychiatrist. A $1,000 copay ended up in collections. It took me forever to pay it off to the collections agency. I would have paid the facility, a payment plan to them would make sense, but to be constantly called and harassed for a debt from the place I was sent to keep me safe felt like another punch from the universe, another sign that I was not supposed to be here, that I would never get ahead. Because that debt was reported to my credit report, I couldn't get a car loan on my own, or any rental with a credit check was an instant no. I didn't have any credit before that experience, and trying to build your credit when you're already in the hole is exceptionally difficult.
I hate to interrupt you. Can you wrap it up?
I will.
Thank you.
So to let you know, 7 years later, that debt was gone. We work hard at NAMI, Nevada, to help Medicaid reimbursement, to make sure we have providers. We understand all the things that you have brought up in what we need in this state to get ahead for mental health. We want people to be reimbursed at what they're worth, but we want people with mental health conditions to live.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, and I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO, and we are in full support of the bill. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, N-O-R-M-A-N, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. Pete is one of our great attorneys who's on the front lines of debt defense, and he sees it every day, people struggling to pay those bills. I don't think I could say it any better than some of the people that already have spoken, so just ditto. This is a problem we see all the time, and the point that medical debt is fundamentally different than any other kind of debt, I think couldn't be said enough. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, for the record, Ryan Beeman, B-E-A-M-A-N, representing professional firefighters in Nevada. As a trustee and that manages a self-funded, self-administered nonprofit health plan for our families and our firefighters. We understand the healthcare world, along with representing our members through also representing through the workers' compensation process and having to deal with medical debt. Information about your medical history and your health is protected and among the most intimate, sensitive categories of data. I know there are similar bills on the federal level, but we appreciate Assemblymember Carter recognizing the sensitive nature of each of this information and that the bill puts protection in place for our participants against collections of medical debt, which is would be helpful for our members. We appreciate that this one makes sure that the participants know that there are financial assistance and programs available, and we urge you to support this bill.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tara Webster, T-A-R-A-W-E-B-S-T-E-R, and I'm the Policy Manager for the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada here in support of AB 204. I'd like to begin by thanking Assemblymember Carter for introducing this important legislation aimed at banning medical debt collectors from reporting to credit bureaus and engaging in aggressive collection tactics such as harassment, seeking liens on individuals' homes, or garnishing wages. Medical debt is a major contributor to economic and health inequity and is the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States. Many people avoid seeking medical care when they're sick to escape the burden of high costs. No one should have to delay or forego necessary medical treatment, and absolutely no one should lose their life because healthcare costs are prohibitive. I am one of those people. I'm a lifelong anaphylactic and have been hospitalized more times than I can count. As a result, my life has been a continuous struggle with medical debt. There have been instances while experiencing life-threatening allergic reactions, I've hesitated to call an ambulance or to go to the emergency room because I knew my insurance wouldn't cover the majority of the expense. While pregnant with my now 2-year-old son, I had multiple overnight hospital stays due to prenatal complications. During his birth, a team of respiratory therapists rushed to provide him emergency care. And days after his first birthday, he endured a challenging 7 days in the ICU, which you can imagine was not cheap. Unlike many, I'm fortunate to have insurance coverage. However, since the birth of my son, my family continues to receive harassing calls from debt collectors for medical bills we've already paid or that we are unaware that we even owe. I'm testifying today because a medical emergency can affect anyone at any time. We need a healthcare system that is reparative, not commodified or driven by debt. While this bill represents a small step toward reforming our healthcare system, I urge you to support AB 204. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kayla Maese, spelled K-A-Y-L-A-H. Last name is M-A-E-S-E. I'm a civil rights analyst at the ACLU of Nevada, and the ACLU of Nevada supports Assembly Bill 204. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in support?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
No worries. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Noe Orozco. That's N-O-E, accent over the E, O-R-O-S-C-O, and I'm the Government Affairs Manager at Make the Road, Nevada. Medical debt disproportionately impacts our gente. We are also more likely to be uninsured, making us vulnerable to sudden, overwhelming medical expenses that often lead to debt collection. I'd be able to provide a lot of the statistics. I know you've already heard of them, and you also will be hearing some of these personal stories. So I just want to say that these are more than just numbers. The statistics are more than just numbers. They represent the lives, stories, and experiences of our communities. And with that, I want to thank the Assemblyman for bringing this piece of legislation forward, and we ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in support in Carson City? I don't see any. I see some people are already seated in Las Vegas. You may begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. Each person will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. For the record, I will be translating for the two beside me.
Thank you for letting me know.
Buenas tardes. Soy Blanca Molina, miembro de Make the Road, Nevada, y estoy aquí para apoyar. Se trata de una cuestión personal, porque aunque yo tengo seguro médico, hay muchas personas que no cuentan con ese privilegio y no deberían sufrir por esa razón. Esta propuesta de ley es necesaria de forma urgente, porque esta situación obliga a las familias a caer en la pobreza, tomando decisiones difíciles en momentos muy emocionales, en los que muchas veces las personas están enfrentando situaciones de vida o muerte. Recordemos que una emergencia médica o enfermedad de alto riesgo no son cosas que podemos planificar y nos puede pasar a cualquiera. Como residente de este estado, le pido a votar por AB 204, porque es esencial para crear un futuro justo y equitativo para todos. Su apoyo es vital para nuestra comunidad y la próxima generación. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. And for the record, her name is Blanca Molina, spelled Blanca-Molina. I am a member of Make the Road Nevada, and I am here supporting AB 204. This is a personal issue because even though I have health insurance, there are many people who do not have that privilege and should not have to suffer for that reason. This bill is urgently needed because this situation forces families to fall into poverty, making difficult decisions in very emotional moments, in which many times people are facing life or death situations. Let's remember that a medical emergency or high-risk illness is not something we can plan for and can happen to anyone. As a resident of the state, I urge you to vote for AB 204 because it is essential to creating a just and equitable future for all. Your support is vital to our community and the next generation.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, presidente y miembros del comité. Mi nombre es Antonio García, orgulloso miembro de Make It Road. Hoy les hablo en nombre de miles de familias de Nevada que sufren por las deudas médicas impagables. El sistema actual convierte una enfermedad en una condena financiera. Una emergencia médica puede costar decenas de miles de dólares, incluso con seguro. Muchas familias enfrentan la pérdida de sus hogares, la ruina crediticia y la pobreza, todo por necesitar atención médica. La AB 204 ofrece una solución justa y urgente. Evita que las deudas médicas destruyan el historial crediticio. Protege a las familias contra el desalojo por facturas impagables. Regula la práctica de cobro y promueve transparencia en los costos médicos. Enfermarse no debe significar perderlo todo. Les pido su apoyo para la AB 204 para proteger a nuestra gente y devolver la justicia al sistema de salud. Muchísimas gracias.
And then in English, my name is Antonio Garcia, and I am a proud member of Make the Road Nevada. I speak to you today on behalf of thousands of families in Nevada suffering from unpayable medical debt. The current system turns an illness into a financial sentence. A medical emergency can cost tens of thousands of dollars, even with insurance. Many families face the loss of their homes, credit ruin, and poverty, all because they need medical care. AB 204 offers a fair and urgent solution. It prevents medical debt from destroying credit history, protects families from eviction for unpaid bills, regulates collection practices, and promotes transparency in medical costs. Getting sick should not mean losing everything. I ask you for your support of AB 204 to protect our people and return fairness to the healthcare system. Thank you for your time. And I would also like to provide my own testimony. Hello, my name is Katia and Sotelo, spelled Kathia. I am a member and organizer at Make the Road Nevada. I support AB 204, which prohibits healthcare providers and debt collectors from reporting medical debt to credit agencies or taking wages and homes as payments. This is a personal matter to me because I am someone who has been directly impacted by medical debt. When I got sick at 19 years old with cancer, my family borrowed money and took out loans to help pay for my medical treatment. Even after that, we were not able to cover all of our expenses and went into medical debt. I was often confused as to how much I had to pay and was contacted by aggressive debt collectors. All of this confusion was not good for my condition and added to my stress. I hope that medical billing rules can be more clear in the future to avoid this happening to anybody else. As a resident of the state, I urge you to vote for AB 204 because it is essential to create a fair and just future for all. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony and also for translating today. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in support? I don't see any broadcasts. Is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 204, please press *9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Matilda Miller. That's Mathilda Miller, Government Relations Director at Native Voters Alliance Nevada. We strongly support AB 204 because no one should ever survive a medical emergency only to be buried in medical debt. At 18, I had to make life or death decisions for my father: one ambulance ride, one emergency surgery, 2 planned surgeries, 5 intubations, 2 months in the ICU, 1 feeding tube, a grand total of 3 months at UMC. My father survived, and I remembered when the first bill came in the mail, I saw a number so high and thinking that no working family, specifically mine, could ever afford that in just one lifetime. No matter your politics, the available balance in your bank account, or your zip code, you're one bad diagnosis, 1 accident, 1 emergency away from being in this exact position. This isn't about playing our violence, it's about common sense. Nevadans should be healing, not drowning in medical debt, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Ulloa. I am a resident of Winnemucca and the local outreach organizer with Make the Road Nevada. I'm here today to express my strong support for AB 204. And in my work, I have seen how medical debt destroys the financial and emotional well-being of working families in our community. This has affected my personally because when my husband was in an accident, we were not communicate how much, when, and the payment period, so that this will not affect our credit score. We have just bought a house months before the accident, so when they give us the information and a deadline of 1 month of the payment, we have to cut back our expenses, affecting our financial stability considerable. Let us to make difficult decisions to buy food or on a daily basis, work overtime and borrow money to cover the debit because we know that our credit score determines our change for growth and family stability. Many people I work with have been affected as they are unable to access housing, jobs, and student loans, affecting their future irreparable. The bill is a crucial step to ensure that no one has to think about saving their loved ones' life or keeping a roof over their head. I urge you, please, to support this bill to protect Nevada families. Thank you for your attention.
If you are just joining us and would like to testify in support of AB 204, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Caller ending in 898, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin when ready. Chair, it appears caller 898 is not unmuting. Would you like to proceed to the next caller?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. This is Dora Martinez with
the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition. Madam Chair and members of the Hardworking Committee, thank you to the sponsor of the bill for this common sense bill, and I ditto. Thank you. We support. Thank you.
Caller ending in 898, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Chair, it appears our last caller to provide testimony in support is not able to unmute themselves at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 204. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? Please begin when you're ready. Remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name's Patrick Kelly, Kelly, and I'm with the Nevada Hospital Association. Medical debt collection impacts both the patient and the healthcare delivery system. I want you to know that Medicaid patients, about 20% of our population, does not pay for hospital services. Uninsured patients receive a 30% discount on their hospital bills. For low-income and uninsured patients, hospitals have financial hardship programs that forgive substantial amounts of debt based on their ability to pay. Hospitals routinely work on payment arrangements with low-income and uninsured patients to avoid debt collection. As drafted, AB 204 prohibits healthcare providers from reporting medical debt to credit agencies and limits other normal debt recovery efforts. While this might sound like a good idea, it's bad for the healthcare delivery system, consumers who pay their bills, and insurance markets. First, if healthcare providers can't pursue effective debt recovery efforts, why would anyone pay their medical bills? Why would anybody buy insurance? This bill applies to everyone. Millionaires can simply ignore their medical bills without any real consequences and shift their costs to honest people who pay their bills. How's that fair? Secondly, a large part of personal injury settlements is based on the plaintiff's medical bills. This bill prohibits hospitals from placing a lien on those settlements until at least 180 days after the first bill is sent. By that time, many of these cases will be settled, the money will be dispersed, and healthcare providers will receive nothing. Healthcare providers should be allowed to place the lien on third-party settlements at the time the service is provided. These are just a few of our concerns with AB 204. We want to thank the bill's sponsor for his willingness to discuss this matter with us and to consider amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Blaine Osborne, B-L-A-Y-N-E, Osborne, O-S-B-O-R-N, and I'm with Nevada Rural Hospital Partners. First, I respect the intent of this bill, and I certainly sympathize with a lot of the stories that we heard today. I think none of these folks are the bad actors that we're talking about here, that I hear from my member hospitals, that many of the patients in these situations do not take advantage of any of the opportunities, any of the payment plans, or any of the discounts that the hospital makes available to them. In 2023, out of our 11 nonprofit critical access hospitals in the state, 8 of them operated at negative margins. I'm afraid that this bill will only exacerbate these issues and contribute to the rising costs of healthcare in the state and in the country. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Reed, D-A-V-I-D-R-E-I-D, and I am General Counsel at the Receivables Management Association International. RMEI is a nonprofit trade association representing the financial services industry, including banks, credit unions, non-bank lenders, collection agencies, debt buying companies, and law firms. RMEI respectfully opposes AB 204 as drafted. RMEI has worked closely with state legislatures from California to Maine in support of legislation that was enacted into law that places reasonable restrictions on medical debt. Therefore, our opposition to AB 204 is not because of the subject matter, but because of the broad definitions included in the bill text. For example, in the bill, the term medical debt is so broadly defined that it could even apply to non-medically necessary items purchased on a Visa card at a grocery store. The impact of such a broad definition could result in preventing the collection, litigation, garnishment, or credit reporting of any consumer debt in Nevada, not just medical debt. However, this overbroadness can be addressed by using a boilerplate definition of medical debt used by the Biden administration in the federal rulemaking, which has been adopted in California and soon will be adopted in Washington state. Adopting the CFPB-endorsed definition would move RMAI to a neutral position on the bill. However, even with a neutral position, RMAI would recommend the legislature proceed cautiously with the broad limitations and restrictions contained within the bill. It is our experience that while these bills can provide some short-term benefits to consumers, it needs to be balanced with the potentially long-term and devastating consequences to the public health system, especially in rural areas. Other states have adopted a medical debt forgiveness program, which helps consumers while not harming the medical system. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Stewart, D-A-N-I-E-L-S-T-W-A-R-T, from Brownstein, and I'm testifying on behalf of Clark County Collection Services and the Nevada Collectors Associations. My clients are opposed to AB 204 as written, but welcome the chance to work with the sponsor and any stakeholders to potentially find some common ground. There is a shortage in healthcare providers all across the state, and for better or worse, my clients help that those providers get paid for the services that they've already rendered. We worry that the prohibitions in this bill, while well-intentioned, would only exacerbate that shortage of healthcare providers. Thank you for your time, and again, look forward to working with the sponsor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. We unfortunately also have a couple of concerns with this bill, specifically in Section 13, there's language that would void any debt that is reported to a consumer reporting agency, and Section 18, language pertaining to the Attorney General that would allow for pursuing anything that is about to violate. We would like to thank the bill sponsor for, we've had a chance to discuss and are very much looking forward to continuing those discussions. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and committee members. For the record, Brian Reeder speaking on behalf of the Nevada Credit Union League. Unfortunately today, in opposition to the bill as written, we have spoken with the bill sponsor and we fully intend to work with the sponsor to address our concerns. Nevada credit unions serve more than 400,000 members statewide, and for our members, often credit unions approve open-ended lines of credit. At times, those are for things like financing elective surgeries and other medical needs. So as drafted, the credit unions would probably have to reconsider approving those loans, something we don't want to do. But again, we're hopeful that we can work this out with the bill proponents and bill sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see any. I do see a couple of people in Las Vegas. You may begin when you're ready. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the Assembly, Commerce, and Labor Committee. My name is Jacqueline Nguyen, J-A-C-Q-U-E-L-I-N-E, Nguyen, N-G-U-Y-E-N, and I serve as the Policy Director for the Nevada State Medical Association, the largest and oldest nonprofit organization representing physicians in Nevada. I'm here today to provide testimony on AB 204 and to express our concerns regarding the potential unintended consequences this bill could have. Our members became doctors for one reason, because they want to care for others. They're dedicated to providing quality care for their patients, and advocating for their patients will always be our top priority. But in order to continue providing that care, they must be able to maintain their practices. NSMA is proud to be one of the few organizations representing private practice physicians in our state. These are your solo and small group practitioners who not only provide exceptional care to their patients, but also employ front office personnel, billers, mid-level practitioners, and other critical support staff. These physicians face the ongoing challenge of managing small businesses and are often dealing with the rising cost of doing so, typically operating on very slim margins. In most instances, the final cost of healthcare is not just in the hands of the physician, but dependent upon other factors such as insurance coverage, cost of medications, and more. But we, more than anyone, know the burdens of the cost of healthcare, and whatever it is in our control, our physicians seek solutions to work with patients to deliver the care they need. We're concerned that AB 204 could make it harder for our doctors to maintain their practices and exacerbate the already challenging environment of operating a private medical practice in Nevada. However, we're grateful to the bill's sponsor, who's been open to working with us and is sensitive to our needs and concerns of the physicians. We will continue working with the bill sponsor, and we are hopeful that necessary amendments will be made to address these concerns. Therefore, we urge this committee to carefully consider the potential unintended consequences of AB 204, as it may ultimately harm the very access to care that we all wish to preserve and improve in our state. Thank you for your consideration.
Afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Roberta Ollinger Johnson. That is ROBERTA OHLINGER-JOHNSON. And I am testifying today on behalf of the Creditors' Rights Attorneys of Nevada in opposition to AB 204. We do understand the scope of what's at stake here. I personally had to prepay $2,000 for a small procedure recently, and a CRAN colleague had to prepay $16,000 to have a brain tumor removed, which was a medical necessity. However, we are experienced in this industry, and we believe that making medical debt uncollectible will simply shift the debt to prepayment, as we've already personally seen, and not help the people this bill is intended to help. Specifically, CRAN opposes Section 6 subsection 3 because it attempts to limit access to the court, which is a First Amendment right to petition the government for redress of grievances. But having sat here and listened to the testimony, I would like to skip down to Section 14. Some of these are already illegal or already covered by exemptions, so they are unnecessary and duplicative. Specifically, I would like to advise the committee that we already have a homestead exemption, which protects the primary residence of the consumer, and that's currently in the amount of $605,000. We also have a wildcard exemption in addition to the garnishment protections, and that wildcard exemption allows the consumer, or the debtor in this case, to apply a $10,000 exemption on top of already existing protections against garnishment. I bring this up because I'd also like to talk about judgment liens. And when I have a judgment and I record that judgment, it results in a judgment lien. And that is a junior lien, which is typically passive.
Ma'am?
And it attaches.
Ma'am,
yes.
Your time is almost up. If you can please wrap it up. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I was going to say, we simply don't have the ability to splice out a judgment lien from attaching to all, which attaches to all the property of a debtor from the protected property. Thank you.
And thank you for participating. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see any broadcasts. Is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 204, please press *9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and honorable members of the committee. My name is Chris Quigley, KrisQuigley. I'm Director of Government Relations for the Consumer Data Industry Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide respectful opposition testimony to AB 204. CDIA represents consumer reporting agencies, including nationwide, regional, and specialized credit bureaus, as well as background check companies and other entities in the consumer reporting ecosystem. Our members empower economic opportunities by ensuring fair, safe, and reliable transactions, which expand consumers' access to financial products tailored to their needs. With regards to AB 204, I'd like to first point out that federal preemption under the Fair Credit Reporting Act includes clear preemption provisions that prohibit states from regulating areas of consumer reporting covered under federal law. The proposed legislation conflicts with these federal provisions, raising significant legal and compliance concerns. In addition, excuse me, there are risks associated with not reporting medical debt. Medical debt is often an indicator of financial risk. Suppressing this information undermines the accuracy of credit reports and, in turn, the reliability of credit scoring models used by lenders. Less reliable credit reports create uncertainty for lenders, which can lead to stricter lending practices, reduced credit availability, or higher interest rates for consumers. Inaccurate consumer reports contribute to a healthy credit and lending ecosystem. I'd also like to point out there have been significant efforts to address medical debt reporting. As of July 1st, 2022, all paid medical collection debt is excluded from consumer credit reports, meaning these debts no longer impact credit scores. There have been extended timeframes for reporting.
If you can please wrap up your testimony.
Of course.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the sponsor of the bill, as I know he's working with our lobbyist in the Capitol. And we do plan to continue to work with your office with regards to the definition. And so thank you.
Thank you so much. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Hello, my name is Jonathan Shaner. That is Shoener. I am calling in on behalf of the Creditors' Rights Attorneys of Nevada in opposition to AB 204. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. I too want to reiterate that on behalf of the Creditors' Rights Attorneys of Nevada, we certainly sympathize with the intent of the bill, but we see a number of issues that have been discussed with the way that it is currently drafted. I'll take up a couple of them. First one being Section 9, relating to the definition of medical debt. Paragraph 2A initially excludes from that definition credit card debt that's defined under NRS 97A. Now, this exclusion is important because without it, it would be difficult or impossible to determine whether a debt owed on a credit card might fall under the definition of medical debt under this bill. With that said, removing the carve-out in instances in which, quote, the card is issued for the sole purpose of purchasing healthcare services, products, or devices, end quote, presents some problems. First, that definition doesn't expressly say whether it is the card issuer or the card holder who determines the sole purpose for the card. So, for example, if a consumer opens a credit card and uses it only to purchase healthcare services, products, and services, does that make it subject to the definition? The same concern also applies to paragraph 2B, extensions of credit by a financial institution. Now, there are some credit card issuers who issue cards that are expressly designed and intended by the issuer to assist consumers in paying for medical treatment, services, and devices. Seemingly, the intent of paragraph 2A is to include those types of cards within the definition of medical debt. But those types of cards can oftentimes be used for items that are far more expensive than what would be commonly considered to be a medical debt.
Sir,
Some of those cards can be used for spa.
Sir, I hate to interrupt you, but can you please wrap it up? Thank you.
Yes, I would ask that the definition be considered, and I would also say that the CFPB endorsed definition is one that we would advocate for. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Yes, Chair. If you are just joining us and would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill, excuse me, if you are just joining us and would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 204, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. caller ending in 490, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
CYRUS HOJJATY. I will ditto all the opposition comments. It's great to hear from both sides. I will sympathize with the people in support. Medical debt is a very serious issue, as well as other debt, student loans. So, but I just don't think this bill is the right way to do it. And I'm starting my taxi cab job, so it's a very high risk job, and things can happen. So, thank you.
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in a neutral position? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 204, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Assemblymember Carter, would you like to give any final remarks?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry about that, Marzola. Max Carter, for the record. Just want to say that I am committed to working with all stakeholders on this bill. We've been having very good and productive discussions. Now, to sum it up, I firmly believe that nobody that's lucky enough to survive cancer should lose everything they own. And that's what we're seeing out there. Addressing medical debt is not a partisan issue. This is about supporting Nevadans who wake up every morning to go to work, to do the business of the state of Nevada, and us taking the steps to protect them and ensure they are receiving the best care possible. Call me crazy, but I believe Nevadans should be able to access life-saving care and keep their home. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you for being with us today. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 204. I will now open for public comment. Please address your remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. If you direct your remarks to issues over which this committee has no oversight, I will redirect your remarks. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give public comment? I see a lot of people getting up, but not sure if it's to... I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers choosing to provide comment at this time.
Thank you so much. Are there any comments from committee members? I don't see any. That concludes our meeting for today. This meeting is adjourned.